South Africans have expressed their will in 6 free, fair elections since 1994. But 29 years into our democracy, it is becoming increasingly clear to many voters that our democracy is failing to meet the expectations that have been generated in election after election. Former Vice-Chancellor and Principal of the University of Johannesburg and the current chairperson of the South African National UNESCO Commission, Professor Ihron Rensburg, joins us now in studio as we take a broad look at the country's democratic trajectory in terms of politics and the economy, and also, of course, looking at governance. Prof, good morning and thank you so much for making time for us.
Good morning, Ihron. Thanks so much.
Don't you miss the students?
Indeed. And the staff.
And the staff as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's reflect on the country's democracy. What would you say some of the pressing issues are currently for the country?
There are 5 pressing issues in my mind that I think should be the focus over the next many months leading up to the elections and beyond, of course. But before that, just an observation in my own experience in working here at the SABC, in working with Peter Matlare and the team turning it around in 2001 to 2006, spending time at the University of Johannesburg, merging 3 universities, working in the Department of Education, which was one department at the time, I had learned one thing, a kind of rule of thumb. 10% focus on the past, what got us here, 90% focus on how to get out of here. Mm-hmm. And so against that background, I think there are 5 glaring issues facing us. The economy. I think and maybe let me again make the point, why do I say these 5 issues? Because they're foundational to any nation state, to any democracy. If we build these on, if you like, sand, then we must not be surprised that the results look grim and the outlook equally grim. So, number 1, the economy. And I'm just going to run quickly through them and then return to them. Number 2, our social infrastructure, our social systems. Number 3, our public administration, our civil services, we know it. Number 4, crime and safety in our country. And number 5, active citizenry, so to speak. So those are 5 themes for me that are foundational to our ability to lay solid foundations for a flourishing democracy. And so looking ahead, the economy, we all know what the situation is. We sit with extremely high youth unemployment. We sit with very high general unemployment in our nation. Clearly, we cannot build a nation on such a weak foundation. We also know that our economic infrastructure is undergoing extreme crisis, collapse of rail, of port, of all of these key economic infrastructure dimensions, of roads, and so on. Of course, the one that's top of mind is Eskom and the ongoing load shedding. All of these are impacting trust and confidence in the state, in government in particular, that's running our nation state. And so unless we are able to tackle those definitively, inclusive of the state-owned enterprises, we are not going to be able to mobilize local investment and, for that matter, foreign direct investment to enable us to rebuild that economic infrastructure and enable us to tackle unemployment.
Let's start with the economy. And you are part of the inaugural commissioners of the National Planning Commission. And the National Planning Commission came up with a plan. It said that the target is, by 2030 at least, we need unemployment to be at 6%. And what has happened over the past years is unemployment has actually increased. Where do you think we went wrong? Or does the NDP not state clearly what should happen for us to get to that 6% by 2030?
I think there were a range of interventions recommended at the time, key to which always is trust between government and the private sector, trust between the private sector and the state-owned enterprises. I think that in the if you like, the third of the 3 decades, things simply went completely wrong, where that trust broke down right at its foundations.
Why is that the case?
And that's simply because it's self-evident that we had seen enormous corruption initially seeping in and establishing itself. It's still a significant factor of our nation state, of our economic and social life as we speak. And so when you have that trust breakdown, don't expect that there will be significant domestic investment. And so those sitting on trillions of rands of cash, so to speak, in the domestic economy would rather keep that quote-unquote under the bed, so to speak, in safe investments, rather than make a bet on our economy, make a bet on our nation state.
Yeah, the president, when he came in, spoke about creating a capable state. One of the issues that have been raised before was around the quality of human capital that will be able to take the economy to the next level, but also within the state itself. Where do you think the state is failing in creating that capable state?
I think that we have to spend considerable time, on recruiting the right people, the right capabilities into senior and into middle management in the state. Those are the key levels. I'm not suggesting that the almost 1 million workers in the public service are not important, but you have to model behavior. You have to lead by example from the top and into the middle of the public sector. So you've got to have your best leaders, your best administrators within the public sector. So that's number one. Number two, we've got to invest definitively, deliberately in training people. Obviously, there are the technical capabilities on the one hand, but on the other hand, there's the simple thing of emotional intelligence, of a connectedness to people. And part of the trust gap between the public sector and our people is a sense that actually they don't care.
I remember speaking to he was then just appointed the Deputy Chief Justice at the time, Raymond Zondo, who has now come on to become the Chief Justice of the country. And I asked him about the lack of faith that people are expressing in at least 2 arms of the state. At the time, it was the executive as well as the legislature, parliament. And I asked him, what about when we reach a point where people lose confidence and faith even within the judiciary itself? What would that mean for the country? And part of investment is also having a strong judicial system.
Absolutely, Aldrin, you've put your finger on it. In as much as the judiciary is critical and vital to a coherent state, so to speak, it cannot exist on itself as coherent and effective. And yes, we must continue to invest in the capabilities there, invest equally in the values that should underpin the judiciary itself. We mustn't take for granted that the values that we articulate, integrity, trust, confidence in the judiciary, that these are simply, so to speak, in the air and they will happen through osmosis. But it is critical that the judiciary be backed up by an effective policing system. In our country, as I think is again self-evident, we sit on the one hand with rampant crime. On the other hand, we sit with organized, syndicated crime. One gets the impression that there is impunity. One gets the impression that people can get away with it. And so again, a trust breakdown has evolved between our people and the policing system, the crime intelligence system.
Yeah. Let's just quickly look at some of the tweets to the question that we sent out a bit earlier on. This one from Kolile saying, good morning to you all. Currently, as the country, we are faced with many challenges which need the leadership to be proactive, because many people now are starting to lose faith due to many number of things within the leadership. That is from Kolile. And this one, Papi saying, morning all, politics in South Africa is not about serving people, but self-enrichment. The economy is in ICU. Governance might do with some changes, and working together as a nation might be a good way forward. Prof, in closing remarks and just reflecting on some of the tweets that we've received there, what would you say South Africa should be doing now going forward? There's also the possibility of even having a National Assembly that is hung and more provincial legislatures being hung as well. And we've already seen the instability of coalition governments at a local level.
I wanted to pick on the last stanza, if you like, of the second tweet, which really speaks to a key recommendation, again, in the first National Planning Commission's work, that active citizenry that is engaged in public life, that also makes an effort to reconnect to politics, so to speak, to hold politics accountable, to inform and shape politics, so to speak, is absolutely essential and critical. And so I think there are several efforts at the moment focused on engaging and mobilizing active citizenry. I think that the key for us in the years ahead in respect of mobilizing an active citizenry is our youth. The millennials should not, let me put it this way, the millennials should be unleashed.
Yeah.
And they should unleash themselves, right, from this expectation.
What's your advice quickly on that particular point? Because you've worked with young people. What's your advice with people who work with young people to unleash that potential?
Please look at your capabilities, build your capabilities, initiate efforts, develop your entrepreneurialism. I'm afraid, as things stand, in the absence of a fundamental reset of the state and government in the next period, there is an increasing sense that young people have to take action. They have to focus on building their capabilities. They have to invest efforts in entrepreneurial activities. I think we're seeing much of that energy unleashed in Kenya, by way of example, in particular in small and medium enterprises in the broader digital space.
Prof, thank you so much for your time. Fees did fall, didn't they?
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much for your time.